My favorite subject for the longest time was history. And there were multiple reasons as to why I loved it. It was funny, it was interesting. It made me realize how connected our world was. We were talking in 7th grade about ancient Greece, and obviously the figure of Socrates came up. You may not have heard of him, but he's someone who shaped a lot of our philosophies and ideologies today. Now, this particular quote was written on the left-hand side of the book in bold, bright red. I'm not an Athenian or a Greek, but a citizen of the world. I didn't understand what it meant at first, so obviously I had to dig in deeper. So my question was this at the time, and still continues to rest being the same. Why did Socrates, such a smart man, place the fact that he's a citizen of the world before he did a citizen of his country? He shared ideals, beliefs, ideologies. This leads to a very intricate issue that is mostly the core of world politics and geopolitics, a huge debate. Multilateralism and nationalism. They might sound like hard words. They're actually words with which we might have heard of, but which stand to the core as to how our leaders proceed to take and to innovate our countries. So, multilateralism is a conviction, it's a belief, it's an ideology, school of thought, that practically relates to the idea that through global cooperation, we can better our world, better each other's societies. So through countries signing bilateral contracts, through countries signing treaties, we can help to better the entire world. Through this mutual cooperation, we can help better our future. Examples may vary, and I will talk to you about two in particular, but some organizations that I'm sure you've heard of are the World Trade Organization, United Nations, whose main objective was to enforce this ideological concept, to reinforce multilateralism. Now, on the opposite side of the spectrum, we have nationalism. Of course, I agree that this is a term that we might have heard more often, and there's a reason to that. Nationalism is the belief that we should protect fiercely our country and our country alone, my country first. And unfortunately, nationalism has been one of the issues that led to multiple world conflicts, most famously the Second World War. But what does this mean to us? What does it mean to us as students, to us as people, to us as citizens? I'll discuss to you two very important events that happened that I'm sure that most of you are aware of or know. So the first one being a treaty that was signed, commonly referred to as the Paris Agreement in 2017, that tackled one very important global issue, global change, climate change, how it is affecting each other's countries. And the second issue I'll talk to you about is the COVID-19 pandemic. So starting with the first one. In 2015, Paris Agreement was signed. It practically said that 196 nations agreed that we will collectively lower our greenhouse emissions, and that by each country sort of putting in a specific amount of money, we will help to make sure that our temperature was 2 to 1.5 degrees Celsius lower, and to take it to pre-industrial levels. I'm sure that we all know the effects of this issue because we feel it today. For example, in my own country, I just visited it, and I realized that even though it was supposed to be autumn, it felt just like summer. Everyone started wearing clothes that were lighter. There were clothes that you particularly wear in summer, and it's an issue that sometimes we might not realize, but it will affect us more in the future. So what happened? In 2017, then President of the United States, Donald Trump, withdrew his own country from this agreement. And I will just mention one quote of his for you to understand the importance of this issue. So he mentioned, "I was elected from the citizens of Pittsburgh, not Paris." He represented the citizens of Pittsburgh. So his idea was that the US was giving too much, the US did not get enough, therefore the US was to be drawn by this treaty, and the US stopped contributing. Of course, this led to the lack of funds, And of course, this meant that the Paris Agreement did not carry out its objective. Why did he do this? I mean, we can see both pros and cons in this decision of his. But obviously, as a leader, he put his country's interest better than the entire world's interest. That's not necessarily a bad thing per se. But that's to say that sometimes our leaders' opinions and our leaders' decisions can be polarized. Now, talking about the COVID-19 pandemic, we all know the detrimental effects it had in our world. So countries such as the UK, the US, and several European countries signed bilateral contracts with vaccine producers such as AstraZeneca, etc. So what does this mean? That they got the vaccines, sometimes even more than they needed, and their countries are fully vaccinated. Third world countries did not get this amount of vaccines because they didn't have the support, they didn't have the monetary funds. So what happened? Nationalism. They put their country's beliefs, they put their country's interest before the entire world's interest. But this is a pandemic. We're talking about people getting infected. It doesn't pick the nationality of another individuals. So what does this mean for us? Funny enough, China was one of the countries that during the COVID-19 pandemic signed agreements and endorsed into something that we now refer to as vaccine diplomacy. So they bought these vaccines from the producers and they sold them to countries for a cheaper price. Why? Because China realized that no matter how much the Chinese leader might have wanted the people from China not to get infected by COVID, if the people from the countries close and to the borders would get infected, eventually, consequently, Chinese citizens would suffer. So this means that no matter how much we might love our own country, no matter how much we might appreciate our values, our morals, our ancestors, our beliefs, we need to realize that we live in a very interconnected world. We have to embrace global unity. That does not mean that we shouldn't appreciate our past, that we should only focus on our future and not appreciate where we come from, who we are. Of course we should. We should also take into account that there's a balance that needs to be kept between how much we need to give to the other countries to ensure our own country's benefit and how much we need to protect our values and our identity. So I've talked in the majority of my speech about the importance of finding a balance, but unfortunately there isn't a formula. Like many things in politics, there isn't something that should be done or should not be done. But I think that considering our awareness as students through the social media or AI or different medias from which we get information, which is abundant, we need to realize that the importance is not just to stick to our own little bubble, but to try to spread it, to try to open it up, to try to make the world feel connected as it already is. The world is more connected than we can imagine. And these two examples, such as the Paris Agreement and the COVID-19 pandemic, just brought these issues up to light. So my plea to everyone who might listen to this, and to you in the audience, is to try to think that how can we, as future world leaders, as future members of the United Nations, as future members of international business relations, or as future activists, try to help our own countries understand the value of being connected to the rest of the world. Thank you very much.